Think Like a Champion Episode 4. Men are born to succeed, not fail. Henry David Thoreau. Keep the big picture in mind. Sometimes people spend too much time focusing on problems instead of focusing on opportunities. You have to keep the big picture in mind even when minding the details, or your vision could become micromanaged in an unnecessary way. I always try to keep two wavelengths going at once, which prevents brain cramps and reminds me that I'm destined for success. How do I know this destiny? Because like Thoreau, I believe we are born to succeed, not to fail. If I can believe it, you can believe it, too. Here's how. First of all, expect problems. Even problems can be turned around to your advantage, and sometimes surprising events can happen. When I had some financial problems back in the 1990s, I remember debating with myself whether or not to attend a black tie dinner at the Waldorf. I certainly didn't feel like celebrating anything or talking to anyone, but I got dressed, went there, and as it turned out I was seated next to someone I really clicked with, and he was a banker. The chemistry for great things was there, and it was the last thing I had expected to happen. I had been in a negative mindset, but my disciplined side took over, and without any expectations on my part, things took a decidedly better turn just because I showed up. Second, you have to remain determined. If you have a big picture in mind, you will need big determination to go with it. The old saying "Rome wasn't built in a day" is an apt one. There is no easy way, much as I'd like to tell you otherwise. But if you are doing something you love doing, it should not present too much hardship. Most of us are aware of the tremendous difficulties that faced people like Michelangelo and Beethoven, yet they prevailed and they're still with us centuries later. It helps to know what other people have faced in accomplishing their goals. A lot of times we don't know how much work is required until we get into something, no matter how much research we've done, so fortitude is absolutely necessary. Then we come to the unexpected events that happen that can thoroughly alter our plans, such as earthquakes, wars, natural disasters, and so forth. Here's when the theory of adaptability comes in. Are you able to remain flexible enough to handle catastrophes? Disasters happen, and they aren't always foreseen. Suddenly our big picture has a new script attached to it. Well, believe me, you can handle it if you go with the flow and remain determined at the same time. The best thing to remember here is Winston Churchill's advice to never give up. Never, 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 in nothing great or small, large or petty, never give in, except to convictions of honor and good sense. Never yield to force, never yield to the apparently overwhelming might of the enemy. We may not be experiencing the blitz, but sometimes when problems start up, it can feel like it. Prepare yourself with strength of character to withstand discouragements as well as disasters. People who have endured great hardship often say they survived because they kept some sort of hope going, a vision of the future, despite horrible immediate circumstances. They may not have had a big picture in mind at the time, but they had a semblance of one. Try to emulate their example. It is obviously an effective thought process for survival. Sometimes a dead end can be a new beginning. My father used to tell us the story he thought was really funny, although I never thought it was that funny. I think he was trying to tell us something about remaining determined. Anyway, it went like this: a guy loved soda. Just loved soda. So, he decided to go into the business and named his product 3-Up. It was a failure. So, he started over again and named his new product 4-Up. It, too, failed. So, he started again and named his soda 5-Up. Once again, it failed. Once again, he tried again and named his soda 6-Up, and it, too, failed. Well, he decided he'd had it with the soda business, and he gave up. That was the end of my father's story. As we all knew, 7-Up became a very successful and famous brand of soda. So that must have been his message to us: the soda guy simply gave up too soon. We've had some good examples, from Thoreau to Churchill to my father, so let's pay attention to them and keep them in mind in the years to come. I think it will do us all good. After all is said and done, more is said than done. Aesop. Get the best people you can. One of the most important things I've learned is to watch what people do versus listening to what they say. Sometimes, judging on what I see them doing, I think people have no idea what they've talked about. It reminds me of a split personality, with the mouth going one way and everything else going the other way. One big step toward success is to get the two working in tandem. You will also find out that it will save you a lot of time and energy to become solid. I've said before that every new hire is a gamble because you never know exactly what you're getting. Some people with great credentials don't deliver, and some people with not so great credentials turn out to be great. There is simply no guarantee when it comes to people, and watching them in action turns out to be the proving ground. That's why on The Apprentice, the candidates are told they are entering a job interview that will last for months. It's a great way to see potential employees in action versus listening to how great they think they are. One quality of leadership is knowing your subject. That also extends itself to knowing people. It's always a good idea to assume the worst, because then you might be pleasantly surprised. I've had some solid gold people and some real scoundrels, and somehow it manages to balance out. But my expectations are realistic. Not every person is going to be a perfect match. And no matter how much you want to trust people, you still have to be a little paranoid. That sounds tough, and it is, but never expect everything or everyone to be easy. To be blunt, we all have to watch out for ourselves. That includes you, and that includes me. It's best not to trust people too much, because that's just setting yourself up for some nasty surprises. I graduated from college in 1968, so I've had a fair share of experiences with people by now. If I were to tell you they were all great experiences, I'd be lying. I've met the gamut of personalities, and some of them had some disorders, to put it nicely. These disorders don't always surface quickly, so it's best to protect yourself from them to begin with. Be circumspect, if not paranoid, with people. I've had people who have worked for me for over 25 or 30 years, so you may be wondering why I talk about being paranoid. It's another way of saying, don't take anything for granted. I don't take my solid gold employees for granted because they don't take me for granted either. It's a two-way street, and it works best that way. If you can aim for that, that's the best way to go. I have evidence that it can happen. On the other hand, I've had some complete washouts, people who managed to prove themselves to be not only incompetent but untrustworthy. That's the other side you have to expect from time to time. To think it won't happen to you is a big mistake. I have been taken by surprise by certain unexpected behaviors, so now I rein in my expectations, and my equilibrium is the better for it. A leader needs to know about people to remain a leader. Most of us have been exposed to the work of Shakespeare, and he spends a great deal of time dwelling on the characteristics of human nature. Some of the examples are extreme, but they aren't so far-fetched as to be unbelievable, or Shakespeare wouldn't still be performed today. There's something about his work that is timeless, and the timelessness comes from his insight into human nature. One of his greatest achievements was King Lear, which is a good lesson in how good intentions don't always work out for the best. And it becomes a virtual wipeout while showing the complexities of human relations. That's a dark example, but it's better to be aware than to be unaware of what the world can be like. On the brighter side, I think most people want to be the best they can be. That's probably one reason you're reading this right now. You've chosen the high road, the path to more knowledge and experience. It's one of the reasons I enjoy giving speeches and teaching. I can share what I know with people who are really motivated to know more, to do more, and to improve the quality of their minds and lives. It's a great feeling. I hope you'll continue to expand your life every day. It's not that I'm so smart. It's just that I stay with problems longer. Albert Einstein. Winners see problems as just another way to prove themselves. Problems are a mind exercise. Problems can be opportunities. If you put different names on different things, it's surprising how much that can affect your approach to them. Some people play chess. They see it as a game. It is also an art, a science, and an exercise in problem solving. But they enjoy it and are passionate about it. Bobby Fischer, the famed chess champion, answered when asked about his technique, "I don't believe in psychology. I believe in good moves." He also mentioned that he gave 98% of his mental energy to chess, whereas others gave only 2%. That explains his success. It couldn't be said or done more simply. Maybe we're not all chess champions, but we can still learn a lot about problem solving. There is the old saying that if you don't have problems, then you don't have a job. They come with the territory of any endeavor. So, it's good to know how to deal with the inevitable. If the sun rises and the sun sets, there will be problems to deal with. I know people who see problems as a game to be won. I know people who see problems as burdens. That is just giving yourself another problem to deal with. We've all heard people talk about someone who has a lot of baggage, meaning they're carrying around a lot of problems with them. That really isn't necessary, especially in this age when traveling light is the goal. Try to avoid the gravitational pull of dispensable weight. When I was doing the first season of The Apprentice, I had limited knowledge of how shows work, how networks operate, and how shows are rated. Was this a problem? It could have been, but I saw it all as an opportunity to learn something new. I was the new kid on the block, and it could have been daunting, but I decided to go for it. It was like a crash course. Had I known that 95% of all new television shows fail, I might have thought twice about it. In that case, what I didn't know worked for me. I just put all my concentration into what I was doing, and as problems surfaced, I dealt with them. Think how boring it would be to just sail into things and have everything be perfect. You can't prove your merit on quiet waters, whether you're a businessman or a mariner. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "It is a lesson which all history teaches wise men, to put trust in ideas, not circumstances." That is a good way of saying you need to focus on your goals, not your problems. If people waited for everything to be perfect before attempting anything, the world would be in a sorry state. Maybe I just like challenges, but I have to say that without a challenge, I would find the world a little flat. Maybe that's one reason I like building skyscrapers. As a builder, I know that being thorough when it comes to your problems will greatly reduce them. Being thorough means being meticulous. Don't toss off your problems, and don't dwell on them either. Deal with them. Who's the boss, your problems or you? Better make sure of your approach on that subject. If Einstein turned his back on problems, I doubt if he'd be as quotable as he is today. He admits to staying with problems for a long time, an indication of his patience and perseverance. He thought about problems until he had them figured out. In other words, that's how he found solutions. That is a good way to go when it comes to just about anything. Maybe none of us are an Einstein, but we can learn from his approach. If you've got some problems today, that's a good sign. It means you're alive for one thing. So, give that some thought, and make the most of that situation. Follow your bliss and the universe will open doors where there were only walls. Joseph Campbell. Scotland, you're hired. This story started 2 years ago and, as of November of 2008, had a happy ending. I had spent 5 years reviewing sites throughout Europe for a golf course and turned down over 200 possibilities for development. Then in 2006 I saw the links land at Meany Estate, which is in northeast Scotland's Grampian region. I had never seen such a dramatic unspoiled seaside landscape. It had 3 miles of spectacular oceanfront and sand dunes of immense proportions. To put it mildly, I was excited. I knew this was the right place for my golf course, and I had 2 additional reasons for that. My mother was born in Scotland, and Scotland is the birthplace of golf. This would be a labor of love for me, and I couldn't wait to get started on my plans. Well, 2 years later, I can finally get started. After I got full approval to go ahead, I realized this would be a great business lesson for you to hear about. It's about determination and perseverance. As soon as my proposed development was announced in 2006, environmentalists were immediately on guard. In fact, the environmental statement on this estate takes up 2 5-inch thick books. Also, it would be an expensive development, costing £1 billion. Anything I do means instant scrutiny, but the scope of my plans was such that no one thought I would get approval to go ahead. In short, there were a lot of issues to be dealt with, from badger and otter protection plans to the economic value to locals. I knew it wouldn't be easy. It became such a saga that the BBC filmed several documentaries and HBO did a feature on the project hosted by Bryant Gumbel. This was going to be a challenge, but there was no way I was going to give in or give up. When something matters, it matters. People were expecting a duel, which I realized, so instead I offered a partnership approach. We worked with the Scottish National Heritage, and because we had the same concerns, it became clear that I am environmentally sensitive. I was also inclined to be sympathetic to the rich history of the area due to my own heritage, and I gave that aspect due respect. I also hired the leading expert on geomorphology, and we did extensive research on the 25 acres of sand dunes on this land. I was thorough and painstaking, which I think was noticed. The Scottish government held a public inquiry that lasted for 5 weeks, and my development had very broad local and business community support. The local politicians were for it, the environmentalists supported us, and a significant point is that the Scottish ministers also agreed with us. It turns out that it is one of the largest land use applications approved in UK history. The locals were ecstatic, and considering the worldwide economy, I could understand that. I could literally write a book about this development already, and we're just getting started. But I have to say this victory is particularly meaningful because it's been a victory for everyone. Scotland and the locals won. And so did I. We have received tremendous feedback from people who have watched this development over the past couple of years, remarking on how tenacious we were to fight that long and that hard for it. There have been thousands of articles printed about it, and I received countless letters, mostly encouraging me to keep up the good fight. I'm known for being persistent, but this was and is truly a special case because it has to do with my roots. Apparently, those roots go very deep. I made a point to visit my ancestral home with my sister Marianne during this time, which further cemented my determination. I think I surprised even the diehards by the battle I fought and won. But it wasn't just business, it was personal, too. That can be a formidable combination. In honor of my mother, Mary MacLeod Trump, I kept the faith and won. She's the one who always told me, trust in God and be true to yourself. I'm glad I listened to her because that was very wise advice. Scotland has a true Scot behind them all the way, and Trump International Golf Links will soon grace the north coast of Scotland. Tempo, the rate of motion or activity. Webster's Dictionary. Develop a tempo when you're working. I've mentioned before that when you're the CEO of a company, it's like being a general. You have to be in charge, you have to take responsibility, you have to instill confidence. But it's also a bit like being a conductor, which is one reason I mention tempo. Think about it, an orchestra is comprised of many parts, of many instruments and players, and when they all work well together, you will have an exceptionally good orchestra. But the conductor is the one responsible for the tempo, for the performance, for the teamwork. It's very much like having a well-run organization. I operate quickly, which is allegro to an orchestra. My organization is the orchestra, but I'm the conductor. I'm very well aware of how important it is to keep the momentum going at all times, whether you're in the mood or not. My team will take the cue from me, and I know it. Learn to develop your own tempo and stick to it. See it as an inner metronome that keeps consistent time no matter what's going on around you. People often ask me what makes me tick. I think that's part of it. I simply respond to my own tempo, and my mode is working fast. Maybe yours is slower, maybe it's even faster, but we all know what speed is best for us. Stick to that tempo and keep at it. People will learn to plug into that, and you will see faster results because of it. Can you imagine if every musician in the orchestra had their own idea of what the tempo should be? It'd be cacophony, a mess. That's what can destroy businesses, too. Be a good conductor and make sure you're all in accord on this basic component. When I conduct a meeting, I'm in charge and I need people to keep up with me. People who work with me know my tempo, and they've adjusted. New people learn how. No matter what situation or business you are in, be alert to the level of energy around you. It will help you through every day. So, if you're not in charge yet, realize it's your responsibility to take the cue and respond accordingly. People talk about being in the zone when they reach a certain level of achievement, whether they are runners or writers. It's when things come naturally, a sort of synchronicity. I know the feeling when I am making deals and I see the pieces falling into place the way they should. It's something to aim for, and tempo has a lot to do with it. For example, you probably all know the feeling of having to write a term paper. Sometimes it's not so easy to get started. Maybe you've procrastinated, but finally one night you get down to it and, after a while, you are producing the pages without a lot of agony. Thinking about doing it was probably harder than actually getting it done. Something takes over and the work evolves. A lot of that is tempo, or getting into the groove, and pretty soon performance takes over and you're done. I've noticed that some people need a new speedometer because their positive momentum is so slow that they couldn't possibly expect to get anywhere. Their tempo is set at a big number in the minus category somewhere, and they still can't figure out why they haven't arrived anywhere yet. Some people may think they're born losers, but a tempo adjustment, that's an scenario. There's another reason I like to use the word tempo. Tempo also refers to the game of chess. It's a turn to move in chess in relation to the number of moves required to gain an objective. Note that it refers to gaining an objective. We all know that chess is a game of strategy. So is business. Think about that and develop a tempo starting today. No person who is enthusiastic about his work has anything to fear from life. Samuel Goldwyn. You can better your best at any time. If you see every day as an important day for your future and a special day just because you have it, you will be amazed at how productive and energetic you will be. It's the best way to be at your best at all times. Ever say to yourself, "What a great day"? Say it to yourself today, right now, and see how your enthusiasm level begins to improve. That's the first step, and it helps if you're already doing something you love doing. Things just work out better that way, and you won't have to work very hard at creating momentum or enthusiasm. But no matter how well you've done, you can always do more and do better. That's how I avoid complacency and how I maintain a high level of productivity. For example, after I'd finished Trump Tower and it became a great success, I knew it was just the beginning, and I was right. I kept moving forward and later built Trump World Tower at the United Nations Plaza, which became another sensational success, critically and personally. Maybe I thrive on challenges, but the most significant challenges are the ones you give to yourself. I don't need to impress anyone at this point, but I do need to satisfy my own goals and ideals. For example, the Trump Hotel Collection has taken the Trump Organization International in a short amount of time. It was a natural extension of our brand in the luxury sector of the hotel industry, and Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Eric have taken the concept worldwide. It has been exciting to see the growth and success of this collection, and it didn't happen because I was already satisfied with my achievements. I didn't put a limit on my own horizons. Don't ever think you've done it all already or that you've done your best. That is just a shortcut to undermining your own potential. Unless you've already kicked the bucket, there's still a lot more you can do. We've all been around know-it-alls who remind me of the cynics who know the price of everything and the value of nothing. Avoid that trap by realizing your own potential and the intrinsic value of things, including your own efforts to make the day a great one for yourself and others. One task assignment on The Apprentice had the teams giving a techno expo for senior citizens. Part of the theme was to give back, so the assignment was given at Trump Place on the Hudson River, where I have donated a large park to the city of New York. As a reward, in keeping with our theme of giving back, the winning team went to a children's hospital to give presents and spend some time with the kids. Afterwards, the team members commented that while working with the seniors was a high, seeing the smiles on the children was the bonus. They'd been allowed to better their best effort, and their sincerity was obvious. Everyone had a great day. So do more, be more, give more, and everyone will benefit. It is a curious fact that people are never so trivial as when they take themselves seriously. Oscar Wilde. They thought I was doing so well. Soon after The Apprentice premiered and was a hit show, I became a popular choice for television commercials. I turned a lot of them down, and I did a few, but one for Visa always remains in my memory. It was funny and I was allowed to display a self-deprecating attitude that I think took people by surprise. The surprising thing is that I'm more humble than people might think. I'm humble enough to be grateful, for one thing, and I still have a sense of humor about myself. In this commercial, called Rooftop, I am shown on top of Trump Tower holding my Visa card when a gust of wind blows it out of my hand and down many scores of floors to the street below, which happens to be Fifth Avenue. Then I'm seen rummaging through a dumpster in search of my lost card, and when a well-dressed passerby on Fifth Avenue sees me emerge from the bottom of the dumpster, she indignantly remarks, "And I thought he was doing so well." The idea of the ad was to show that I was learning about the security my Visa card could provide to me. The effect was that I'm a guy who would go through a dumpster to make sure of it. That sums up a lot about how I can be, which makes me a lot like everyone else, if you think about it. The part I like about some of the things I've done, when I look back, is that I'm not afraid to be seen as human, because I am. What would you do? What would I do? There's a lot we all have in common. Not that it was necessarily due to the protection the card offers, so the second lesson is that you should know what a product has to offer you to begin with. It could save you a visit to a dumpster. I remember being asked why I would appear on a popular national television show dressed in a pastel yellow suit in a skit called Trump's House of Wings, accompanied by singing chickens. My answer is, why not? I will admit I nixed the idea of appearing in a chicken costume, but the yellow suit I got in replacement wasn't exactly a step up. But it was a memorable skit and everyone had fun. One number you didn't see on Saturday Night Live, and one I liked a lot, as well, was about a romance novelist who was a real estate tycoon who lived in a skyscraper on 5th Avenue. There were just too many skits and that one got cut. But I think I made a fine example of the possibilities of romance novels that can be based on fact. I have a great romantic streak and I live very happily and romantically in my 5th Avenue apartment. When I appeared on the Emmy Awards and sang the Green Acres theme with Megan Mullally, I know a lot of people were surprised, but we had fun. The same thing happened when I got into the ring and took a challenge from Vince McMahon of WrestleMania. That was a stretch for a real estate developer, but it was definitely a new experience and one I enjoyed. Here's my point: don't be afraid of taking chances. Go for having a good time, because in the process a lot of other people just might have a good time, too. My theory is, take your work seriously, take yourself less seriously. It's a great recipe for some good times and great memories. Being good in business is the most fascinating kind of art. Making money is art and working is art and good business is the best art. Andy Warhol. It's not personal, it's business. Business is about making money. It's about the bottom line. The sooner you realize that, the sooner you'll get a grasp about what business is. I'm very often surprised by people who think business is something else. They come in with lofty ideas and philanthropic purposes that have absolutely no place in a business meeting. It's a waste of everyone's time. I remember when a group of businessmen wanted to build an atrium on the ground floor of 40 Wall Street. It was a beautiful idea. They wanted to make 40 Wall Street the downtown equivalent of Trump Tower, except they forgot about something. What would they do with the steel columns that support a 72-story building? That rather major structural component never entered their minds. I hope they didn't take it personally when I pointed out their oversight. Business is business. For example, if you get fired, there's usually a number behind it, and that can take the personal affront right out of it. Businesses have to watch out for their bottom line or they won't be in business for very long. Don't get worked up. If you do, you might be taking it the wrong way. It isn't always easy, but try to be objective. I learned early on that business can be completely impersonal even when you're dealing with human beings. One banker I was dealing with was so indifferent that he was literally like a machine. When a machine says no, it's very tough. There's no negotiating possible. I remember writing that you'd be better off dealing with a killer with real passion than with an institutional type who has no emotion and just wanted to go home at 5 o'clock. Sometimes we run into brick walls like that. Our only recourse is to find another way around it, which I did. But I got a good insight into how impersonal business can be. I'd rather be personable. It also works better, provides more options for everyone, and allows for more creativity. It can require more energy, but I can tell you the results will be worth it. It still strikes me as funny that I suddenly became very popular after I started firing people every week on national television. People really liked me for that. Or so I thought. What it was is that they were seeing the real person behind the famous name. They see that I can be tough but that I try to be impartial. I'm also a bit of a teacher. I've always been this way, but it was never seen before except by my employees. I'm personable, but I can be all business. Believe me, it's a formidable combination. I have to be careful not to blow people away, because if you cross me personally and professionally, I'll have a double whammy waiting for you. I don't enjoy being vicious, but sometimes in self-defense it becomes necessary. I don't like the double standard, as in, whatever I do is okay and whatever you do isn't okay, or vice versa. If you treat me a certain way, then I can treat you that way, too. Some people call that the old an eye for an eye approach, but I call it playing fair. Sometimes the only way to deal with a bully is to punch him back. Let them know who they're dealing with. Fair play is fair play, and once again, don't take it personally. It's wise to be circumspect, and some people just say get your self out of the picture first in order to see the big picture. Don't take personally what is not meant personally. A lot of times people misdirect their anger, and if you take it personally, you'll become a punching bag for angry darts. I've had people say totally off-the-wall things to me, which I can now deflect, knowing that about 90% of the time their comments have next to nothing to do with me. You have to develop a thick skin, and keep your own positive wavelength going at all times. Be tough, be smart, be personable, but don't take things personally. That's good business. The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. Albert Einstein. Think like a genius. Every morning I read a variety of newspapers, from local to national to international. This group includes the Financial Times of the UK, the New York Times, the New York Post, the Wall Street Journal, and more. Then I tune into the morning news programs on television. By the time I get to the office, I have a good overview of what's happening in the world. Considering what has been happening lately, this kind of attention is absolutely necessary. It's also necessary for us to begin to think creatively. I live and work in the same building, so I have a very short commute and rarely run into traffic, and that is a tremendous time saver. What I do is quickly assemble what I've just read about and heard, and then I see how it pertains to any of the businesses I have or deals I have in process. I also get updates throughout the day on what is happening, both nationally and worldwide. There is no way you can be effective without being informed, and this is more important today than ever. Control is about education. Lack of education or information can put you at bigger risk for losing control. Of course, there are things we can't control, and there is an element of risk in our lives that we can't deny or overrule. But brain power equals a very powerful leverage. That doesn't equal being a know-it-all. I'm known as someone who asks a lot of questions. With the economic crisis causing major problems here and some big ripples around the globe, it seems some very informed yet creative thinking is in order. Recently I read an article about some famed geniuses who included Aristotle, Leonardo da Vinci, and Einstein. Aristotle held metaphorical thinking in high esteem. Einstein found visualization to be helpful in solving problems. And Da Vinci believed in restructuring a problem to make it more accessible or broader in scope. I realized that I did all of these things, but not necessarily deliberately. All of them believed in chance. In fact, they prepared themselves for it, and creative accidents would result, some of which have produced wonderful inventions. All of them kept an open mind and were full of a sense of wonder. I mention these components because each of them can be applied to business with some great results. Sometimes people ask me how I do what I do. I don't always have an answer because part of the process is difficult to describe, but when I saw these points in the article, I realized that is definitely similar to what I go through to arrive at certain decisions. All of us have creative powers, so devote some time to learning about this process. Someone asked me if I thought I was a genius. I decided to say yes. Why not? Try it out. Tell yourself that you are a genius. Right away you will probably wonder why and in what way you are a genius. And right away you will have opened your mind up to wonder and to asking questions. That is a big first step to thinking like a genius, and it might unlock some of your hidden talents. Another point made was that geniuses tend to produce. They are prolific. Not everything will be fantastic and mistakes will be made, but they have a huge volume of work to show for their brain power and their mastery of the thought process. Einstein mentioned that numbers and words had little to do with his thought process because he had learned to visualize. Yet he published hundreds of papers in the course of his career. Another characteristic that geniuses tend to share is the ability to think in opposites. This is outside the boundaries of logic and allows your mind to operate on a new level. When it comes to business, this can be tremendously helpful as it's one way to see the ups and downs, the cycles, of finance and real estate, and know that as they happen, they can be dealt with. Do not underestimate yourself, and know you are able to handle what comes your way. Just increase your leverage by learning to think like a genius. And remember Einstein's words, anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new. Great minds have purposes, others have wishes. Washington Irving. Go against the tide. The world is rich with examples of originality. Original means independent and creative in thought and action. Nowadays we call it thinking outside the box, although the term supposedly derives from a puzzle created by an early 20th century British mathematician. Whatever you call it, it very often means going against the tide, which may not be the easiest way to go. But sometimes the easiest way is also the mediocre way, and that's okay if that's your standard. But it isn't mine, and it most likely isn't yours either if you're taking the time to read this book. When I was starting out in real estate, my father thought I was nuts to want to build in Manhattan. I was going against the tide, and I knew I was up against some pretty big odds, but I wanted to carve my own niche. I had my own ideas and knew I'd have to be independent as well as creative to see them happen. I'm certainly happy I decided to take the chance and to go for it. It would have been easier for me to just stay with the family business and leave it at that. Fortunately, I had a good education and experience behind me. I always warn people not to jump into anything unprepared. It's that old fine line between bravery and stupidity. Know the tides before you dive in. There's always a certain amount of danger, danger meaning the unknown, even in shallow waters. Riptides and sharks exist. Sometimes you don't see them until it's too late. Keep that in mind no matter how sensational or foolproof you think your idea might be. Charles de Gaulle is a figure of historic importance, especially as it pertains to World War II, and he came from a family of historians and writers. In fact, his father taught literature and philosophy. But the young Charles de Gaulle had a passionate interest in military matters, and he was determined in every respect to pursue this unexpected passion. He was a force in world history known for his extraordinary stubbornness. He became known as the man who said no when he refused to accept the terms of the armistice with Nazi Germany. When he said no, he meant it. There was no equivocating. I don't know all the details of his early life. But I can imagine a boy from a family of intellectuals might have experienced some scrutiny when he displayed an intense interest in all things military. But he knew what he wanted to do, and he followed his own path. It's a good idea to take your own pulse once in a while instead of just focusing on what the masses are doing. Take a break from expectations, from the media, and plug into yourself. You might find that your electricity is better suited to another socket. You might have to exert yourself, but look at the alternatives that remain. Get out of your so-called comfort zone. I call it complacency, and it's a good way to get nowhere. I remember firing someone who once said I think it's good enough when referring to project he was working on. Good enough? It wasn't good enough for me, and if it was good enough for him, he shouldn't be working for me. I want people who will go the extra mile to make it the best. Don't be so easily pleased with yourself or with anything else. Be tough and keep your standards high, even if you have to fight the undertow. We use the term groundbreaking in construction when a new building is about to begin construction. That term is also used to describe something that is new and creative, as in setting a new standard. Make your life as groundbreaking as possible, while also minding the tides and riptides around you. It's a good way to wind up on top. Great works are performed not by strength but by perseverance. Samuel Johnson. Think positively. There have been so many books and examples about the power of positive thinking that it seems unnecessary to even mention it. But I still see examples every single day of the power that negative thinking has over people, so either people haven't gotten the message or they're just plain not paying attention. When I started thinking about this essay, I realized that maybe people just don't have the persistence required to make positive thinking work for them. Things rarely just happen overnight. Most overnight success stories are no such thing. Just because you only recently heard of someone doesn't mean they haven't been working for 20 or 30 years or more already. When my television show, The Apprentice, became a big hit, I had over 30 years of experience to draw upon when conducting the boardroom scenes. It wasn't just a fluke that I came across as someone who knew what they were doing. The fact that I was on television was new, but the rest wasn't particularly new to me. Business is business, whether it's being filmed or not. My business credentials and experience came into the picture as the necessary background for creating a show based on high-stake New York corporate business. How does positive thinking fit into this apprentice scenario? First of all, I didn't say no. I knew it was a risk, but I was positive about what might happen. If I'd chosen to listen solely to the negatives about the endeavor, such as most new TV shows fail or reality TV is on the way out or you'll lose your credibility or you'll lose your grasp on your business empire and about 50 other negatives, I never would have given it a thought. But instead, I chose a positive perspective. I asked myself the what if question. What if it was a success? What if I enjoyed it? What if it proved to be enlightening? What if it brought the Trump organization the recognition it deserved? What if the jobs provided to the winners proved to be valuable stepping stones to deserving individuals? I had a long list of positives to go along with the negatives. I'm a pragmatic positive thinker. When I hear people saying that anything you want to do is possible, that seems childish or at least uninformed to me. Some things are not going to happen. For example, if I suddenly decided tomorrow that I wanted to win a gold medal at the Olympics as a swimmer, and I was sure I could because I was so positive about it, well, I think I'd have to have some mental checks. It's not going to happen, no matter how hard I train. Or if I decided I was going to give Tiger Woods a run for his money as a golfer, starting tomorrow, I think I'd have to worry about being a little irrational. Be positive, but be realistic. Back to the persistence issue. You have to be positive every single day. You have to put a daily effort into it, because believe me, no one else is going to help you with this. Most people think their lives will be easier if they have less competition. The fact that you believe in yourself could get in their way. Good. Get in their way. Upset their status quo. Get out of your own static comfort zone by moving forward with the momentum and power that positive thinking and perseverance can give you. This takes energy, but the result will be stamina, positive stamina, a necessary ingredient for success. Sometimes you just have to be tough. I use the example of a brick wall. Is there a brick wall getting in your way? Fine. That happens. But you have a choice. You can walk away from the wall. You can go over the wall. You can go under the wall. You can go around the wall. You can also obliterate the wall. In other words, don't let anything get in your way. Get a balance, and then let the positive outdistance the negative. When I was building Trump National Golf Club in Briarcliff Manor, New York, I wanted to build a 110-foot waterfall. It pumps 5,000 gallons of water per minute and costs $7 million to complete. We moved granite and many tons of earth to achieve this spectacular effect, and if you think this happened easily and overnight, think again. But I was positive, I was persistent, and I refused to settle for anything less than what I had envisioned. The result was worth the effort, and not surprisingly, perseverance won. Keep that in mind in all your endeavors. Men acquire a particular quality by constantly acting in a particular way. Aristotle. People have different ways of achieving results. We all have different ways of accomplishing things. Some people deliberate for a long time and then move quickly, some people make a quick decision and then take a long time getting around to doing something about it. Sometimes the results are exactly the same. The old saying "to each his own" is right because there is no right way or wrong way. As an example, I like the story about a copywriter who would spend most of his time looking like he wasn't doing anything. He would gaze out the window for hours, sit doing nothing, and made no attempt to look busy. This drove his coworkers up the wall, so they finally complained to the boss. The boss became very interested in this report, asked them how long this behavior had been going on, and then told them all to see if they could get him coffee or lunch. Anything to make sure his day wasn't interrupted. They became irate over this preferential treatment, so the boss told Donald J. Trump them, the last time he acted like this, and the time before, and the time before, he came up with ideas worth millions of dollars. So, whatever you do, don't disturb him. You see, to each his own. We all have our own process. The results are what matter. If someone wanted to review my work process, they might very easily say, well, he spends a lot of time on the telephone. That's true, I'm on the phone and talking a lot. But that's how I do a lot of business. It's not that I'm just chatting on the phone all day. It all depends on the way you want to see something or someone. You can color the situation or behavior in a favorable or unfavorable light. But bottom line, I get a lot accomplished. That's my style. If you want to say that all I do is have daily chat fests and still manage to rake in the big bucks, that's fine with me. My achievements still point toward effectiveness. Find the most productive way of working for yourself. I don't mind working hard, but I see no merit in working stupidly. Looking like you're working hard is a waste of everyone's time and talent. What's the best way to accomplish your goals for that day? Some people work very hard for several hours and accomplish more than other people do in 2 days. It's all a matter of focus. After a while, people will know you by your habits or your habitual behavior. These habits can be qualities, as Aristotle points out. If your behavior is consistently of a high standard, your particular quality may be integrity. That's a good way to go. So, review your habits and make sure they are leading you in the right direction. In other words, make sure you are working toward the results you want to see, and know that your way of achieving them will be distinctly your way. It's also a great way to define your own boundaries without being influenced negatively by anyone else. As a young man, I remember when someone once told me that the clearest way to see people and events was to be non-judgmental, to just see and record the facts without coloring them with "this is right" or "this is wrong" or telegraphing the desired reaction to other people. It's a journalistic approach, journalism in its purest sense, that allows the decision to be made entirely by the individual. In other words, news without a slant. It requires a little more thinking, but sometimes I think we need to do a little bit more of that these days. We should never think our way is the only way, whether we're talking about work ethics or politics. We should be grateful for the diversity we have in our lives and take the time to hone our own natural talents. Sometimes we don't know how long or how hard someone has worked to achieve something. Warren Buffett has a fortune worth many billions of dollars now, but he started out selling chewing gum when he was 6 years old. He made 2 cents a pack. Results are what matter. The bottom line is clearly the bottom line. It's not always a straight line to achieving the results we are looking for, but rather a series of efforts that will add up to experience and achievement. Look at how many years scientists will work toward a discovery and you will understand how patience is one of the ingredients for success. So set your pattern now for achievement of the highest quality. That's your task assignment for the long term. Do not go where the path may lead, go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Discover and live your purpose. One thing I've learned about life is that it is a series of discoveries. It starts with discoveries and hopefully should continue that way. Remember how exciting it was to learn to ride a bike? Ever watched a child taking their first steps? It's a momentous occasion. If we can capture that kind of excitement every day, I think we're on our way to wisdom. Albert Einstein said, "The mind that opens to a new idea never comes back to its original size." I agree. Once you've learned to walk, why would you want to go back to crawling around? It wouldn't make sense. We all have a purpose in life, and that's to do our best to live up to our potential. It's really pretty simple. All we have to do is tune into our talents and capabilities. Remember, I didn't say it was easy, I said it was simple. Sometimes we get so distracted that it's hard to tune out enough to be able to tune in at all. We are bombarded by outside information all day. The challenge here is to find the quiet time to be able to assimilate our own inside information in the midst of all the cacophony. You have to unplug before you can plug yourself back in. I'm a busy guy, but I set aside quiet time every morning and every evening to keep my equilibrium as it should be, which is centered on my own path. I don't like being swayed by anything that might be negative or damaging. When Emerson talks about leaving a trail, he's right. That means you can't be following someone else's path. That means you'd better spend some time focusing yourself on your own path and your own purpose. This is a serious issue, for worldly as well as personal reasons. The worst things in history have happened when people stop thinking for themselves and listen to other people and, even worse, start following other people. That's what gives rise to dictators. Avoid that at all costs. Stop it first on a personal level and you will have contributed to world sanity as well as your own. In business, I've discovered that my purpose is to do my best, to my utmost ability, every day. That's my standard. I learned early in my life that I had high standards. Ever hear of intrinsic value? Intrinsic means basic, inborn, elemental. If you have an intrinsic value, it cannot be taken away or shaken. It's a form of strength that can be unbeatable. Discovery means finding out something we didn't previously know. Purpose is an intention or an end to be attained. We have the tangible and the intangible in life. Let them balance each other out to your best advantage. I may be in a reality-based business, but I have a sense of the mystery in life that keeps me feeling like an explorer. An explorer. Don't put blinders or borders on yourself. I could have very easily dismissed Mark Burnett's idea for The Apprentice simply based on the fact that I was already very busy. but it was a new challenge and a new discovery for me. It served a part of my nature, which is that of an educator. Finding your purpose may be a lifelong pursuit, or you may have found it when you were 5 years old. There's no absolute timeline for anyone. That is a good reason to never give up, to keep on discovering things every day. It's also a terrific recipe for a successful life. Following your own path will bring you to the places you were meant to be. Expand your horizons. In other words, think big and live large. Freedom is not the right to live as we please, but the right to find how we ought to live, in order to fulfill our potential. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Set the standard. People who work for me know that my media persona of being positive and enthusiastic isn't just a facade. I am that way from the inside out. I have big ideas and a big enough energy resource to get them done. Those who are around me will eventually catch on that is how I operate. It's an effective approach that obviously works. It's contagious in the best sense of the word. One thing everyone knows about the Trump Organization is that we get things done, and our energy level is one reason why. I've set the standard and everyone follows suit. If you like to work hard, you will attract people with the same ethic. The people who work with me enjoy the daily challenges and set their own standards to meet those challenges. Their pattern of thinking matches mine. How do we accomplish more? How do we get to where we want to go? It's a combination of vision, courage, and discipline to realize that the possibilities are always there. But if you're thinking too small, you might miss them. Learn to think big. Ask yourself this question: what standard would you like to be known for? Then go about setting that standard for yourself. No one else can set it for you. I can remember when my father couldn't understand why I wanted to develop in Manhattan. I'd had my eye on Manhattan since I was in college, and it was a goal I intended to reach. Years later, when I was describing my ideas for Trump Tower to my father, including the glass and bronze exterior, he couldn't understand why I would choose anything other than bricks to build with. Bricks worked for him, so why not for me? Because I was setting my own standard. When Trump Tower opened to wonderful reviews and became a landmark building, it was clear that my standard had been accepted, and in a big way. I had also been advised to put up beautiful paintings in the lobby of Trump Tower. To me, this seemed old-fashioned and unoriginal, even though I like beautiful art. I decided to put up a waterfall, which to me is like a sculpture in itself, and it has attracted far more attention than if I'd put up paintings. It's over 80 feet high and cost $2 million to build. It's absolutely spectacular, and I've never regretted my choice. Once again, I was setting my own standard. When I decided to rebuild Woolman Rink in Central Park, I did so with my own ethics in mind. Do the best job as quickly as possible for the least amount of money. The city had been trying for 7 years to rebuild and restore this beautiful skating rink. And I finally interceded and finished it in 3 months and at less than 10% of the city's $21 million cost. Everyone benefited. Those are my standards, and I met them. I have my father's 4-step formula to thank for my economy when doing a job: get in, get it done right, and get out. A question I would ask you to ask yourself to give you a jump start in thinking big is this: what is your creative capital? What do you have to offer? What have you acquired in your experience and in your studies that makes you valuable? Are you aware of your own potential? Will you be equipped to make a difference when the time comes for you to step forward? Start thinking along those lines and your worth will have already been multiplied. A few years ago, probably in 2005, I received a phone call from Coach Mike Leach, calling to say how much he liked my books because they were inspirational. I follow college football, so I knew he was the coach for Texas Tech, and a great one. We had a conversation and I realized we shared a few things in common as far as motivation and positive focus go. Since then, I've appeared on ESPN for his team and he's appeared on 60 Minutes. I mention him because there are some good reasons why Coach Leach is in the big leagues. As far as great coaches go, he knows how to get the best from his players, he has an open mind. And he knows that being a coach means being able to teach others to think in new directions. That means their performance will be altered as well. Coach Leach knows what he's doing and how to do it, and he recognizes and develops the potential in other people. He's a great guy in addition to being a success. Maybe you don't have a coach in your life, but if set your own standards, acknowledge your own value, and remain positive from the inside out, you will be heading in the right direction for a very promising future. Intuition is perception via the unconscious. Carl Jung. Go with your gut. We've all heard of instincts, intuition, and perception. In fact, all of us have these things. The important thing is to know how to use them. You may have superb academic credentials, but without using your instincts you might have a hard time getting to and staying at the top. This is one of those gray areas that remain an enigma even to those who have finely honed business skills. It's hard to pin down or to explain how business instincts are acquired. Some of them are inexplicable. But there are signs that can guide you to or away from certain deals and certain people. For example, within a few seconds of meeting Mark Burnett, the creator of The Apprentice, I knew he was 100% solid, both as a person and as a professional. On the other hand, I've met people that I have an aversion to for no particular reason, and while I try not to be judgmental, I have reason by now to trust my gut. Carl Jung said our conscious minds use only 5% of our brain power for daily functioning. If we can learn to tap into that unconscious, subconscious, and dormant 95%, the results can be amazing. Sometimes I think that's what helps our perceptive abilities come to our aid. It's also a matter of tuning in. Ever notice how when we are in a situation that produces heightened alertness, whether it's a survival course or trying to pass an important exam, how careful we are in our responses? Suddenly, everything we say or do matters a lot. That's one way to notice how our instincts are there for us. Logic may say one thing, instincts may say another. Ideally, you should hone the best of both to make the best decisions. I remember when I was acquiring 40 Wall Street and literally every person I met with recommended that it be turned into residential units. I didn't agree. My gut instincts told me it was a great business location. I remained steadfast in my beliefs and the building now houses businesses that are thriving. It's been a lucrative deal for everyone, and 40 Wall Street is now worth in excess of $500 million. When I was first starting out with my golf courses, my instincts told me it was a good direction to go. Logically, I knew that I had a passion for golf already, which is a crucial element for success, and that if I combined that with knowledge of the process, I'd have my bases covered. I found the best golf course designers in the world and spent many hours working with them. The results have been tremendous. I paired both instinct and logic to get these results. Just as you would weigh your decisions carefully, be alert to your instincts and what they are trying to tell you. Spend some time with this innate aspect of yourself. See handling your instincts as an acquired skill. They can give you an edge in many situations, business or otherwise. There are a lot of things we can't see or hear, and our instincts are there to guide us. For example, if you were in the jungle, which would you prefer, a map or a guide? I know I'd feel more comfortable with a guide. A guide has experience and is right there beside you. Your instincts are within you, so use them accordingly. Be sincere, be brief, be seated. Franklin D. Roosevelt. Know your audience. A big key to winning is knowing where the other side is coming from. Whether you are involved in negotiations, a war, or in public speaking, this information can be invaluable. It's also necessary if you hope to connect in any way with other people. And in keeping with FDR's public speaking advice, getting to the point is greatly appreciated by everyone. A great portion of life and business involves acting. Life is a performance art, no matter what field you are in. I've come to understand that fact over the years, and it's a helpful thing to realize. It includes people skills, negotiation skills, public relations, salesmanship, and the ability to read your audience. Whether that audience is 4 people in your office or 40,000 at a speech. The same technique applies. First of all, consider this: is there a common denominator between you? Sometimes, even the weather can be a good starting point. Inclement or severe weather can affect all of us, whether we are billionaires or college students. That's an obvious one. Others take more time to determine. I can remember negotiating with someone I didn't like very much, which put up an invisible wall between us, until I discovered he was an avid golfer like myself. We suddenly had something to talk about that we both enjoyed, and proceedings went better after that. I've heard many stories of how people end up with terrific jobs, not because of their college grades, but because of their hobbies and endeavors outside of their field. Granted, they had the credentials, but so do a lot of people. The people in charge of hiring were looking for something else, something extra, a common denominator aside from the obvious requirements. I know a young lawyer who was hired by a top law firm because in addition to doing well in law school, he also had a master's degree in music. This mattered because the partner doing the hiring happened to be a musicologist in his private time, and he was aware of the amount of discipline a degree in music requires. But it would also provide them with a mutual interest outside the usual legal environment that would enhance their daily routine. Comedians know how to plug into their audience. The best public speakers know how to do that, too. Step number 1 is to know who your audience is. In my book How to Get Rich, I mention the common denominator as a way to relate to people. Ask yourself, what do we all have in common? I may be a billionaire, but I get stuck in traffic jams, too. I have bad days just like everyone else. Realize that a lot of your experiences can be understood and appreciated by your audience because they've had them, too. Make an effort to find what you have in common and lead with it. You will create a bond that didn't exist before if you will take the time to think about it. I recently spoke to an audience of about 40,000 people. Afterwards, a member of my staff asked me if I ever got nervous. I said that I had finally realized that a large part of life was acting, and public speaking was just a part of that. I also thought about the people who would be in the audience instead of my own performance. That perspective frees you up from nervousness to allow you to focus on and know your audience. Save yourself from some unnecessary learning experiences and realize that life is a performance art. Understand that as a performer, you have a responsibility to your audience to perform to the best of your ability. You also have to have the goods to hold your audience, no matter what the size may be. Performers prepare for every performance. That's showmanship, and that's life. Prepare yourself every day. Learn, know, and show. It's a proven formula. Put it to use starting today. 2009 will not be the endless summer, but it may be the beginning of spring. Thomas J. Barrack, Jr. The Good, the Bad, and the Rogue Wave. My friend Tom Barrack of Colony Capital is a brilliant guy, and he sent me an article he wrote in late November of 2008 with the headline, "Today's Debt is Equity plus a few suggestions to help President-elect Obama ease the pain." He bullet-pointed the latest events pertaining to the economy, 22 of them, and I realized that at any other time, just a few of these would be huge topics in themselves. It's a good indication of how alert we need to be. His Cliff's Notes summary: real estate is experiencing a seismic liquidity shock as a result of a complete closure of the credit and capital markets for both debt and equity. CRE and the debt which fueled its growth are in a massive meltdown. Then he adds, and just when we thought that all of the unpredictable had passed, a tribe of African pirates in speedboats hijack a Saudi tanker for ransom. A satirical headline read, "Somali pirates in discussions to acquire Citigroup. All this and pirates, too." Somehow it helps to know the world hasn't changed all that much if pirates are still out there doing their thing. That is one take on it. The other take is that vigilance is certainly necessary in every walk or strait of life, which brings me to the topic of Bernard Madoff and his scheme that came to our attention in December of 2008. I can remember when Bernard Madoff would approach me in Palm Beach, Florida, about investing some money with him. He'd say, "Why don't you invest in my fund?" I didn't know much about him and I'm not a fund guy, so I said no. I had enough going on in my own businesses that I didn't need to be associated or involved with his. Madoff was a frequent visitor at my Mar-a-Lago club, and he was a respected guy. I know people who have been victims of his unscrupulous scheme, and what's happened to them is dreadful. He is without a doubt a sleazebag and a scoundrel without par. The sad thing is that so many people trusted him, and unfortunately some of them trusted him completely. Some people gave 100% of their money to this guy, and now they're literally selling their houses in order to live. It's a great lesson in doing your due diligence. Some very smart people were taken in by him. Just because someone is well established doesn't mean they're not above being a total crook. He was a Svengali for rich people, and he could wipe out hundreds of millions of dollars after just one phone call. Even the people in his own organization supposedly didn't know about it, nor did his sons, he claims. He had several floors in a major office building. How could one man be manipulating that much money without at least some of the people knowing about it? The word here is greed. He certainly made off with some big bucks. I know people are stunned by their losses, and rightly so. I think we would all do well to pay heed to all of our transactions, no matter how much we might respect or like someone. But the main lesson is never to invest 100% of your money with one person or in one entity. Even if someone or something is great, you can't bet the ranch on it, especially a person. They can become dishonest or they can become sick. In Madoff's case, I think it was a combination of both. But you've got to spread your money around with numerous people, or at least 3 or 4. You can't have your well-being determined by one person. My Cliff's Notes summary: there are no guarantees, but there are precautions. Do not let your guard down. Focus on the positives, but don't forget about the pirates. The Rogue Wave. In January, Tom Barrack sent me his notes for a 2009 survival kit. I am sharing them with you because he tells a great story, and he has an equally great insight in applying it to what's been going on. Included here are the first 2 pages of his 4-page essay, and I hope everyone will give this their full attention. The constant turmoil of the recent market is reminiscent of a story Laird Hamilton shared with us at our last annual meeting. No one has mastered the art of living more than Laird. He has spent his life in preparation and anticipation of riding big waves. The biggest waves in the Hawaiian Islands occur on Maui at a surf spot named Jaws. These waves reach 50 to 70 feet and can only be ridden by a few daring professionals utilizing tow-in surfing. Tow-in surfing was invented to turbocharge the entry speed of a surfer to match the speed of the mountainous walls of fury, which would otherwise be unconquerable by traditional paddling techniques. Toin will take you deeper and faster and allow you to ride waves that were unthinkable. A little bit like leveraged loans and derivatives in leveraged buyout land. One morning Laird and one of his surfing mates, Brock Lickle, were in search of bigger waves and less surfers. They pulled around the corner from Jaws to a spot near the Maui airport, which was virgin territory and breaking at 60 to 100 feet wave heights. They watched, analyzed, and thought these just might be the waves of the decade. Even though there was no one else in the water, they started to see, racing up the huge wave faces and pounding through white water trying to get through the treacherous break. Just as they thought they had made it through the impact zone, they looked to the horizon and saw a rogue wave roaring towards shore. They raced as hard as they could towards its looming face, but couldn't climb it in time and were tossed like rag dolls to the depths of the dangerous coral reefs. Laird related that he was no longer afraid at these moments because he had been in so many fearful situations in his decades of preparation that this was now his comfort zone. Both were the best in the world and knew that survival depended upon a few basic elements. 1. Remain calm, don't panic. 2. Save your dry powder. 3. Don't fight the current, let it have its way with you. 4. Don't question your ability to survive, know that you have trained and prepared a lifetime for this moment. 5. Remember, when you get to the top, another wave will no doubt pound you again. 6. Monitor all conditions: sight, sound, smell, motion, pressure. 7. Stabilize your own situation, then look out for your buddy. 8. Once you find your buddy, survival will depend on both of you sharing the pain. Laird and Brock had to hold their breath for up to 4 minutes as they drove to the bottom, trying to avoid their limbs being ripped apart by the ferocious impact as wave after wave kept coming at them. Finally, Laird made it to the top of the last wave of the set and anxiously searched for his buddy. He saw Brock floating 200 yards away in a pool of blood and no jet ski. He swam through the washing machine to Brock to find him badly injured and bleeding. Before Laird could get them both to shore, he had to take off his wetsuit and, in MacGyver-like fashion, use it as a tourniquet on his buddy's nearly severed leg. He then wrapped his arms around Brock and swam them both to the jet ski, bobbing in the crashing surf. He threw Brock on top and opened throttle to shore. Of course, the shore break was 30 feet high, so the landing on the beach was the next heroic act. Laird picked his spot, gunned the jet ski, flew over the top of the wave and landed in the parking lot, which was now filled with hundreds of spectators. Laird pulled Brock off the jet ski to safety and then, standing on shore, realized that he was stark naked. Once Brock was turned over to the emergency team and it was established that he would be okay, Laird grabbed another teammate and a new jet ski and marched back out into the monumental surf. He was not fearful. He got back on the horse and caught some of the best waves of his life. By taking the worst wipeout of his life, he was now better equipped than those other professionals who had been watching unscathed from the parking lot. Humbling 2008. 2008 has been a year filled with surprises, volatility, disappointment, unfulfilled expectations and cyclic shock waves. As a new year dawns, I think it is important that we take a deep breath, relax and focus on the ingredients that are key to our continued survival. We must get back on the horse. My boys share Laird's love of surfing, and in order to convince them to spend time with Dad, it requires Christmas vacations that involve waves. Being in the ocean watching the never-ending changes in the sea allows me to reflect on the similarity of the survival tools needed in these chaotic times. The first great lesson is that of humility. No matter how good you are, when arrogance raises its ugly head, Mother Nature will put you back into your box. Mastery of a wave involves being attuned to all the circumstances surrounding you. It is not about domination, it is actually about submission. The currents, the riptides, the swell, the wind, the reefs, the temperature, the crowds, the shapes are changing every second. The quest, then, is not to stabilize the wave and make each one exactly alike and predictable by all. but rather to perfect your own adaptability to an ever-changing situation and make it through to the other end. If you can survive, great. If you have executed it with style and grace, even better. In this quest, wipeouts are a way of life, and planning to never be wiped out is foolhardy at best. World-class surfers train endlessly to be able to handle the inevitable trip to the dark room. It involves preparation, anticipation, calmness, and an ability to control one's fear. It is knowing what to do when everything goes wrong and you are gasping for breath. What surfers call dry drowning to panic, flail and waste your valuable breath is the worst thing you can do, even though it is the most intuitive. Experienced surfers concentrate on relaxing and not fighting the bone-crushing power of the wave until it relinquishes its force. They must be able to preserve their dry powder to hold their breath and avoid being smashed on the coral reefs beneath them. This confidence comes from experience in previous wipeouts and a knowledge that they are truly prepared for the worst. Furthermore, one surfer's wipeout is another surfer's wave of the day. It is all about anticipation and being in the right position, which is not necessarily the position that the rest of the surfers are seeking. Not following the crowds can be the difference between victory and defeat. At the same time, one must watch the crowd and where it's going, as their amateur moves can cause more damage than the wave alone. The great surfers do not throw away their trained toolkit to harness differing wave conditions. They adapt to the circumstances which they are dealt. Their commitment and dedication are steadfast. They will wait for their spot and pay attention to everyone and everything around them using all of their senses. Those senses are defined and refined by instincts born from repetition, riding thousands and thousands of previous waves in all conditions. They will first concentrate on surviving, then positioning, then dominating the next wave. Investing at this moment feels exactly the same. The sea is swirling, the currents are crossed, the swells are ebbing and flowing, the novices are drowning, and there is grand wipeout after grand wipeout of some of the great names, which is intimidating and daunting to all. Now is that moment for investing. Now is that moment when private equity has its greatest opportunity and its greatest challenge. The turbulence we have experienced in 2008 will dictate the circumstances for new investments, which will surely find historically high returns. History has shown that private equity returns soar at these deep inflection points in stabilized markets. Following the downturns in the early 90s and 2000s, returns were upwards of 25% for U.S. private equity firms. My thanks to Tom Barrack for his consistently great insights. Let's all remember to be champions in every situation and in all conditions, starting right now. You can't build a reputation on what you are going to do. Henry Ford. Building your reputation. I've been building the Trump brand for several decades, and my 3 eldest children are now with the Trump organization, helping to expand our brand. Don Jr., Ivanka, and Eric are all here now. They are my real apprentices, and they're doing a great job. They know that I'm demanding, but they are disciplined and very hard workers, so they are a good fit with the Trump organization. Having a quality brand is very much like having a good reputation. It's important to consider that fact, even when you are just starting out. Remember that everything you say and do is important. Actions matter. You are, literally, your own brand, whether you have a business yet or not. If you are serious about what you're doing, taking responsibility for yourself starts now. The Trump brand has to represent the highest quality available, no matter what the enterprise might be. If I build a golf course, it has to be the best. If I build a skyscraper, it has to be the best. If I have a line of suits, they'd better be terrific. I am very thorough when it comes to certain things. Namely, everything. You'd better be, too, if you hope to get somewhere worth going. I remember when someone mentioned how impressed they were that I would be so interested in trees when I was building a golf course. I had made an effort to find a leading expert of this particular type of tree and spent a lot of time researching them on my own. But I was surprised they were impressed. To me it made sense. You have to know the details yourself. Second-hand information will always be second-hand. Don't be a second-hand person. Go to the source yourself. That's a start on the road to a great brand, a great reputation, or both. No detail is too small, whether it's a tree or a faucet. One assistant remembers that I kept 3 bathroom sinks on a couch in the office for months, asking everyone who came in which sink they liked best. To me, that kind of attention is a component of a comprehensive level of excellence. Some of my buildings have sold out before they are built. Why? People recognize the brand name and know what they will be getting the best for their money. It's not a risk on their part. That's the great thing about building a business based on quality and integrity. It will sell itself. It doesn't happen overnight. You may have to work a while to establish your reputation and brand, but the consistency will be the standard to beat in your chosen industry. I can tell you, it's worth it. Whatever your interests are, get started. As Henry Ford said, you can't build a reputation on what you are going to do. You have to put some action into your plans, ideas, and dreams. Most of us need letters of recommendation now and then. I write them as well as receive them, and I always look for the words responsible, professional, and loyal. If you can build your reputation on 3 words, those would be 3 at the top to choose from. I also think of those words when it comes to the Trump brand to be authentic when it comes to responsibility, professionalism, and loyalty to my buyers, clients, students, readers, audiences, and so forth. I'll be the first to admit it's not always easy. I am responsible for a lot of people. But high standards are high standards, and that's what I stand for. I will not accept less from myself. To build the reputation you want to have, you will have to be the same way. Being stubborn has its rewards. Getting to the top and staying there is one of them. Start now, start today, start this very minute. There's a lot of competition out there, and they won't be waiting around for you. Build your reputation on intelligence, responsibility, and results. That's building the right way. Diligence is the mother of good luck. Benjamin Franklin. The harder I work, the luckier I get. I've always been big on quotes, whether they're mine or someone else's, because very often they distill ideas down to their essence. What Ben Franklin said many years ago could have been said today, because it's relevant and right on. We've all heard about doing our due diligence, which is another way of being thorough. It's also the first step to bringing yourself some good luck. What Gary Player, the great golfer, said, quoted above as the title of this essay, remains solid nutshell advice that can apply to everyone. The mixed-use concept of hotel and condominiums has been a huge success, starting with the first one I did in New York City in the late 1990s. Trump International Hotel and Tower at 1 Central Park West. Since then I've built hotel towers in Chicago and Las Vegas, with many more in the works around the world. Our tower in Waikiki was sold out in 5 hours, which is a record. People ask me, how can you do so much, and I have to say it really isn't luck, but doing due diligence and applying common sense. This mixed-use concept was obviously a winner, so I developed the idea further and then took it worldwide. The strategy has worked, and we now have a Trump hotel collection that encompasses the world. I had always known the Trump brand would go global at the right time. You can apply that to your own life, career, and business as well. Look into the future a bit. Take the time to move yourself forward. If the indications are there, put in the extra effort to make something good even better, or bigger, or both. That is thinking big, and I'm no stranger to that concept, and you shouldn't be either. I've had enough success to know that it works. The past few years of my life have been busier than they've ever been. Everything has escalated, and it's been demanding but exciting. But I've also been preparing for it for a long time. I'm used to working hard, and therefore I'm used to expecting results. Some people call it luck, but like Ben Franklin said, diligence has something to do with it, too. For example, if you've been working towards something for 5 years, I'd say you have a goal in mind. You've probably focused on that goal. Hopefully, you've been diligent in pursuing it. If your work pays off, which it most likely will, people might say you're just lucky. Maybe so, because you're lucky enough to have the brains to work hard. When I'm writing a book, which seems to be most of the time these days, I will spend up to 7 or 8 months putting together notes, collecting articles, dictating stories and ideas before I even begin to actually put it all together. It's a long process, and it requires patience and perseverance to see it through to the finished product. I will admit that sometimes I wonder if it's worth it, because it's not an easy endeavor. But when the book is done, it's a great feeling. It's an accomplishment that has taken painstaking time. People won't see the work that goes into a book, but anyone who has written one will tell you that diligence is a must. They don't just materialize out of nowhere. Recently, while working on one of my books, I spent some time thinking about the entitlement mentality that seems to have afflicted this country. I think we can take it back a few decades to the emergence of what was called instant gratification as personified by the superstars and rock stars who emerged and made tremendous amounts of money, which very much impressed young people. Suddenly, everyone thought they should have what those very few people had, or that those people were overnight stars and it should happen that way to them, too. In reality, it happens to very few people and rarely does it happen overnight to anybody. Those are the exceptions to the rule, not the norm. But they received so much media attention that people who had to struggle a bit or work for long years at something had the feeling they were being left out or that they were being treated unequally. They began to feel that the world owed them something. Not everything works out as we might hope it will, and certain fields require a bigger dose of luck to succeed in than others. But a very good way to pave your own way to success is simply to work hard, to be diligent, and to look at what you have going for you versus what you don't have going for you, the old cup half full versus half empty test. Here's where I bring back my tried and true theory that you have to think big, because if you're diminishing your own prospects, then it's not likely you will run into a lot of luck. And part of doing your due diligence is to know what you want for yourself, not what other people want for you, which much in many cases turns out to be not yourself forward. In other words, take the time to move, work and be lucky. Empty pockets never held anyone back. Only empty heads and empty hearts can do that. Norman Vincent Peale. How to Get Rich. I wrote a book that came out in 2004 called How to Get Rich. I can remember when I was discussing appropriate titles with the editor, and we had a list of them. We kept going back and forth with different ideas, with clever and catchy titles. I finally said, what everyone wants to know is how to get rich. Why don't we just call the book How to Get Rich? To me, that was getting to the point. I'd appreciate that as a reader, so that's the title we chose. Getting rich isn't always simple. I have and will always continue to emphasize the importance of loving what you do first. If your goal is just to make money, you are shortchanging yourself. You might also run out of energy while you're trying to make that money. Passion is an incredible source of fuel that can get you through the tough spells that are bound to come up. So, the first step in preparing to becoming rich is to find something that you absolutely love doing. Maybe you don't know what you want to do yet. That is fine, just set your compass to finding out what it is, and there's a good chance you'll discover it. Meantime, learn everything you can about as many subjects and businesses as you possibly can. Knowledge is never a waste of time. I had studied the entertainment business a bit when I was younger, even though I had decided to go into real estate, and sure enough I ended up being in the entertainment business later in life. That was not wasted time, even though I hadn't consciously planned to enter that field. Now I have a production company in Los Angeles, Trump Productions, and we're entering the 8th season of The Apprentice. Considering that the first Apprentice season started in January of 2004, NBC, Mark Burnett, and I have had a very successful time of it. It's important for you to know something about this story. I didn't do The Apprentice for money. That was not my incentive. I was initially paid next to nothing. Happily, it became a hit show, and the result is that it gave publicity to my brand, which has garnered greater financial success for me than ever before. Sometimes being too cautious is the greatest risk of all. Preparation and organization will help to downsize the element of risk that is often involved in becoming rich. If you are well prepared and have everything in order, you will have provided yourself with a safety net. The best way to do that is to learn to be highly efficient. Highly efficient people keep their bases covered. Easier said than done, but it's a skill set that you can acquire for yourself. Efficiency is the productive use of time. Learn to monitor yourself and the amount of time you use to focus on any specific thing. Having a time limit can be a terrific way to make your brain work at its most effective pace. I remember reading about an order of monks who have a determined amount of time for each duty, then a bell rings and they stop and immediately go on to their next chore. Creating and employing a discipline of focus is a good way to avoid spending more time than necessary on any one thing. I had an editor who, after a meeting with me in my office, commented that he needed oxygen. He wasn't accustomed to the fast pace he encountered, and I think he learned something about economy of time. In summing up, if you want to get rich, two important considerations are passion and efficiency. Have passion for what you do and be efficient about it at the same time. That combination has worked for me. Individual commitment to a group effort, that is what makes a team work. Vincent Lombardi. Work with people you like. There's a saying I remember that is appropriate for this subject. If you're going to live in the river, better make friends with the crocodiles. That being said, let's proceed to this topic, which hopefully will help to make your business life as reptile-free as possible. I've been fortunate to work with people I like. Some of my employees have been with me for 20, 25, even 30 years. If we didn't like each other, that would be a long-term sentence of misery. As it is, we work together well, we respect each other, and we get a lot accomplished. Management becomes a whole lot easier if you are careful when finding employees or partners. People I work well with have to work fast. That is how I work, and they follow suit. Alan Weisselberg, my CFO, Rona Groff, VP, and my chief assistant, and Jeffrey McKinney, my controller, have the ability to distill a lot of information and can explain something to me with a minimum of words, sometimes 10 words or less. Considering how much I have to do every day, I appreciate this brevity. George Ross, Senior Counsel, Jason Greenblatt, General Counsel, and Matthew Calamari, my co, have the same ability. It's not that I don't enjoy talking with them on a personal level, but our agendas have to be attended to, and by now we all know how to get things done quickly, both individually and as a team. The respect goes both ways, and it's a great environment for everyone. If you can get a core group around you that you like and who understands your needs, you will be heading in the right direction. Sometimes I think it's divine intervention when the right people show up, because as we all know, it happens that people who give great interviews sometimes aren't so great, and vice versa. In that sense, every hire is a bit of a gamble. Solid gold credentials don't always mean solid gold people, but sometimes they do. You have to give people a chance to prove themselves. But in the interim, it helps a lot if you like having them around to begin with. You will have to see beyond what is presented to you. Every person has unique talents that may or may not be in their job description or listed on their resume. People are not one-dimensional. I don't like being underestimated or stereotyped, so it is safe for me to assume that other people don't like it either. I appreciate being seen as something more than my public persona, and people who work for me know that although I may be demanding, I am also fair. My door is always open, and they feel confident that when they have something to say, I'll be listening. Someone recently wrote in to ask me how to manage people who she didn't like. My response was to ask her if she liked anything about any of the people she was attempting to manage. We all have hidden potential, and a good manager will find it. A good manager will also look for what he or she likes about the people around them. No one is perfect. We all have strengths and weaknesses. Your attitude toward others plays a big part in surrounding yourself with the right people. If you don't like the people around you, you might start by taking a look at yourself first. Most of us spend a great deal of our time at our jobs. That fact alone makes it important to carefully assess what kind of people we want to spend it with. What matters to you? What combination of personalities will make the day the most effective for everyone? An organization is ever evolving, as we are, and a good balance is necessary for everyone. Does everyone understand, clearly, what the common goal of the organization is? One reason Don Jr., Ivanka, and Eric have done such remarkable jobs is that they understand thoroughly what our goals are and make significant and daily contributions to that end. They work together effectively as a team and individually, which is the ideal representation for any organization. Make an effort to make your working environment as pleasant and effective as possible. It's not impossible. My organization proves that it's not impossible. Just set the example, and you'll be a magnet for the right people. That's the best way to work with people you like. Integrity is the essence of everything successful. Richard Buckminster Fuller. In addition to business, what the successful person needs to know. I've recently encountered a situation that brought me back to something I had learned a long time ago, that it's not just business acumen but integrity that carries you forward in the business world. It's as simple as keeping your word or, in some cases, remembering what your words were. It seems that for some people, simple isn't always easy. I came from the world of construction and real estate development, which is known for being demanding and difficult, but it also requires precision. There can't be anything haphazard in construction or people can be injured. Happenstance is not acceptable. I've applied that approach to everything I do. I can remember when a visitor to my offices commented on how many blueprints there were. He said, "Some people have skeletons in their closets, but I can see that Trump has blueprints in his." Sometimes I think people forget that I'm a builder, a developer. That's my core, and blueprints are important. It took me a while to realize how valuable that background was in forming my discipline as a businessman. It gave me a foundation from which to operate and expand, and a tendency toward thoroughness. There's integrity to building that cannot be compromised. We've all seen the results of hastily constructed buildings in the earthquakes and in other disasters around the world. I will not jeopardize the safety and well-being of people, and if I'm known to be a stickler for details, that is one of the reasons. Our actions and words will eventually point us toward having a reputation for having integrity or not having integrity. I've been around long enough to know how valuable a commodity candor can be. As a business person, it's a strength that can see you through everything. Another important skill is negotiation. I receive many requests asking me about my negotiation skills, and there's a balance to successful negotiation that many people fail to see. The best negotiation is when both sides win. There's a compromise involved, which means careful listening, and when that is achieved, you'll see results that work. Business is an art in itself, and powerful negotiation skills are one of the techniques necessary to facilitate success. I give a lot of speeches, and one thing I will always emphasize is the importance of passion. If you don't love what you're doing, your margin for success is significantly reduced, and tough times will be much tougher to get through. Passion gives a resiliency that is necessary to achieve great things. Michelangelo is remembered in our time more than any pope or politician of his time simply because he gave the world so much and against great odds. That guy was intransigent. There is no doubt that he was passionate about what he was doing. When things seem difficult, it's good to remind yourself of someone like that, someone who kept the integrity of his art first and foremost in his mind and actions. The second point I will bring up when it comes to success is that you cannot give up. You have to keep going and moving forward, no matter what is happening around you or to you. It's a form of positive thinking that is very powerful. A word that comes to mind as a result of this approach is indomitable. I overcame some great setbacks just by being obstinate. I refused to give in or give up. To me, that's an integrity of purpose that cannot be defeated or interfered with to any significant level. Being steadfast in your intentions can reap great results. The other word I like to think of along with indomitable is tenacious. In a way, they are almost interchangeable when it comes to business. Being tenacious will make you indomitable in the long run. The old tortoise versus the hare story still prevails. With today's globalization, I will emphasize the importance of paying attention to global events. The United States cannot be isolationist. We may be the superpower, but what that really means is that we have more responsibility. Our position requires us to be more alert, more careful, and more empathetic than ever. Power is at its best when it's used in the most compassionate way possible. When it comes to business success, it is equally important to know that success carries the same sort of responsibility. Always know that you can be topped and that you can be toppled over. Keeping that in mind will guarantee that you are in your best form for competition. Even if you are currently the top gun, pretend that you are the underdog. It will improve your insight as well as your vision. Intrinsic value is a value that has been overlooked in today's marketplace. Everything has a dollar value, and it becomes very black and white. That is necessary in business. We live in a tangible world with tangible needs. But I will say that I often look for the obscure, the gray area that implies a mystery or a value that is more than money alone can carry. I think most people will know what this is, something that is beyond monetary value. I read a story about an art collector who had amassed a fortune in art, but his prized possession was a painting of his deceased son done by a friend of his son's. This painting was hung next to works by Picasso, Matisse, Monet, and Miro. But it mattered most to the art collector. Its intrinsic value far surpassed the millions represented by the masters. When the collector died, he bequeathed his entire collection to the person who bought the painting of his son, which sold for $10. I mention intrinsic value because as a businessman, it's something that gives integrity and even mystery to everyday business. Not everything is dollars and cents, although in many cases it has to be. Look for the gray areas. It will enhance your life as well as your business sense. As a businessman, I have realized that to whom much is given, much is expected. See yourself as having a lot already, and keep your integrity intact. It's the best way to pave your way to a comprehensive success. Thank you for your supporting our channel. Please help subscribe to get more benefit videos.